It's now 6 o'clock.
Any health advice given, whether general, diet, physical, or spiritual, is general only and must be verified by your doctor. If you need medical advice, please consult a doctor. Assalamu alaikum, I'm Dr. Amna and welcome to the Health and Fitness Show on Inspire FM. Inshallah, everyone's Ramadan is going well. Thank you for joining us live here today on Thursday, the 28th of April, 2022. And for the next hour, we'll be focusing on your health and fitness on the topic of Polycystic Ovarian Syndrome today. Now, we are broadcasting live on 105.1 FM here in Luton, but you can also listen back to the show on the Inspire FM YouTube and Instagram page, which will have all the links of where else you can listen back to the show. We also have a brand new Inspire FM app, which you can download and listen to the audio live or on demand later. So I'm Dr. Amna, I'm a GP living here and working in Luton, and I see patients all the time with polycystic ovarian syndrome. And women often say that they've taken a very long time to be diagnosed, and this is a topic we've had lots of messages to talk about. Now, please do remember we can't give out any specific medical advice. This is something you have to see your own GP for, but for the next hour, we will be speaking to a couple of my guests. We'll have some general advice on what PCOS is, some tips to manage it if you or someone you know are suffering with this condition. Now, I'm very happy to introduce two very knowledgeable women on this topic, both of whom have polycystic ovarian syndrome, and they both use their social media to talk about the condition, talk about the diagnosis, how to manage it. Now, I've got Alia here with me in the studio, but I'm hoping I've got Dr. Amna, who's joined us virtually.
Yes, hello, I'm here.
Oh, I can't hear her.
Oh, can you hear me?
We'll see if she's joining in a few minutes. But in the meantime, I will introduce Alia.
Hello, can you hear me now? So now that you can hear me, I can't hear you. So we're having some
know if you can hear us.
I can hear you now.
Excellent. Okay, welcome. Assalamualaikum.
Alaikum assalam.
Oh, excellent. It's working. So Dr. Amina Hersi is a portfolio GP who actually used to work in Luton. Now you've moved away, but you also suffer with PCOS, and you've actually produced your own supplement for those who are living with polycystic ovarian syndrome. So Assalamualaikum, please tell us a little bit about yourself, your diagnosis, and then we can move on to what PCOS actually is.
So, assalamu alaikum, everyone. Thank you for having me. So I work part-time as a GP, and I was diagnosed with polycystic ovarian syndrome over 10 years ago. And my story, I think, was a lot simpler than most people's diagnosis story, in that I got diagnosed very quickly. At the time I was in medical school, I'd just done my modules on hormone and endocrine and reproductive health, and I had just been diagnosed with an underactive thyroid, and I thought that was the cause for my irregular periods and for my weight gain. Unfortunately, after starting medication for my thyroid, I didn't find that things improved. In fact, things were getting worse. And that's when I went back to my GP, and I had an ultrasound done and a blood test done, and that confirmed my diagnosis of polycystic ovarian syndrome. Since then, I am, an advocate for PCOS. I'm doing a PCOS leadership course with the University of Birmingham and their Metabolic Health Institute. I also run a supplement company called Polybiotics, which is designed for those living with PCOS. I also run an Instagram page called the PCOS Doctor, where I provide educational information for people about PCOS, just to help them navigate, the diagnosis and life with this condition.
Wow, that certainly seems like your whole life is around PCOS.
Sometimes I think PCOS controls my life, so I decided to do the other way around.
Oh, well, that's amazing. Is that kind of how you feel, Alia, as well?
Yeah, definitely. I think since my diagnosis, I didn't know where to look for advice. So I thought, you know what, let me try different things. Mm-hmm. And then just be really open about it on my social media. And, it was public for a very long time, because I know a lot of women suffer from it, but it's still a very, very taboo topic.
It is.
So I guess I just tried different things, but I always suffice that with, confirm everything with your own physician or your doctor.
Yeah.
But this is what's helped me, and this is my journey. And I think that always helps other sufferers as well. And seeing other PCOS influencers has kind of helped me through my journey as well.
Excellent. And it is actually, it's so good that people are talking about all their health conditions, because actually you always feel very alone when you have a health condition or when you feel a certain way. But actually, the more people are talking about it, you realize actually this is very, very common. Lots of people are going through exactly the same thing. And it just makes things a little bit easier just to live with. So people might be listening to us and thinking, actually, they've been talking for nearly 10 minutes and I have no idea what PCOS is or what polycystic ovarian syndrome is. So Amna, do you want to tell us exactly what it is and what kind of symptoms and signs? And maybe we can talk about what symptoms and signs you guys had.
Yeah, so polycystic ovarian syndrome, the name makes you think it's all about the ovaries, but it isn't. It is a hormonal imbalance that affects our menstrual cycles, but it also affects lots of other aspects of our bodies. So I describe it as a top to toe metabolic condition. And by metabolic, I mean our whole metabolism, the way that our body works, all of our hormones can be affected by this condition. Now, it got the name because the most common thing, well, not the most common, the most unique thing that they can use to diagnose PCOS is the appearance on the ultrasound, which is that people have cysts, but they're not really cysts, they're follicles. So they're eggs that haven't ovulated on our ovaries. And that is one of the, most recognized signs of PCOS. But the other, symptoms that we may have may be irregular periods. You might have periods too often. You might have irregular bleeding. You might have weight gain. You may have acne, hair thinning, excess body hair. PCOS is strongly associated with mental health problems as well, eating disorders, as well as depression, anxiety, and a whole host of other conditions that I think we should cover later on. Now, I think it's really important that people understand that PCOS is one of the most common hormonal imbalances that affect women of childbearing age. And 50%, between 50 and 70% of people are undiagnosed. So a lot of people are out there who have PCOS, but they don't know about it. And they're living with these symptoms without having, anything to understand why it's happening to them.
And I think that's probably, from a GP point of view, the fact that it does affect so many different parts of the body, and actually all of those things that you mentioned could be down to lots and lots of other things. So, there are lots of reasons why, people's hair can be thinning or their periods can be irregular. Lots of reasons why people could be suffering with their mental health. We've just been through COVID, which has massively affected people's mental health and how they're dealing with things, and then the physical impact of that on the body. And even people, if they've had COVID, their hair can fall out, all of those things. So it is very, very difficult. As a GP, it's always something that I think, as a female who does, I have an interest in sexual health, then maybe it's a little bit more on top of my radar, but I would still say it's very, very difficult to be diagnosed. Alia, do you kind of do you see yourself in all of those symptoms that we're talking about?
Yes. So I'm probably one of the people that the doctors kind of took years to diagnose because they associated my symptoms with lots of different things.
Yeah.
So I have irregular periods. I also had a lot of hair thinning. I suffer from hirsutism, which is excess facial hair. I also suffer from mental health illnesses. So I also suffer from anxiety and depression. I do have bouts of that as well as kind of, mood changes. The other symptom that I think that really confused doctors for a long time was fatigue. I was extremely fatigued. Like I'd, be sleeping 13 hours a day and I'd still be really, really tired.
Oh, gosh.
And in terms of kind of like, sometimes it was just, in my case, I wouldn't say this is the case for every single person, but in my case, I've had a number of male GPs tell me, oh, you're just, it's just in your head, or, you're just kind of overthinking it. Especially when I, took the complaint of my hirsutism, I was told by a male GP, oh, it's very common in South Asian women to have hairy faces. So I think that's why I think it took a very, very long time for me to be diagnosed. And I think in the end, what prompted them to check for my cyst was because I was complaining of a lot of pain around my lower abdominal area.
Okay.
And it turned out that one of my cysts had burst.
Okay.
So that's eventually when I got the diagnosis.
Yeah. Oh, well, I'm really sorry to hear that, because actually, that can be something that's really distressing to somebody, and to, go to their GP. And I'm I would hope that now there's a lot more awareness on polycystic ovarian syndrome, on mental health, and, the effect of things on us. And I would hope that that's not the reaction that people would get nowadays. But I'm sorry that
I find now, I think it's particularly now that a lot more people are talking about women's health and reproductive health, I find now the GPs are a lot more sensitive to it and a lot more understanding. But first, when I was first being diagnosed, it was like, oh, you don't need to worry about it. It's very common. Another thing that Amina mentioned and I related to was eating disorders. So because I suffer from PCOS, I tend to gain a lot of weight very quickly. It's really hard to kind of, lose the weight afterwards as well. And because of that, I have suffered from like binge eating disorders. So, it is very common amongst PCOS sufferers to have eating disorders. But then again, doctors link that to my mental health rather than kind of realizing that it's actually very hormonal.
And I think that's maybe, you know, if you're listening to this and you think, actually, I see myself in, you know, some of what's being talked about, it's a good idea to maybe just write all of those things down, because I think when you're seeing somebody in a, you know, 10-minute consultation or even a longer consultation, lots of GPs have longer consultations now, you know, you may not realize that actually all of these things are connected. So today you might be coming to say, actually, you know, I'm concerned about my hair growth. Another day you could be coming to say, actually, you know, I feel really anxious. But it may be that that's not being put together as a picture. So if you're listening to this thinking, I think I've got a number of these things, you know, write them down, take them to your GP and say, actually, could I have this? And then what kind of tests would you expect your GP to do? Amna, you've mentioned already the ultrasound to look for the cysts, but there's also blood tests.
Yeah, so to diagnose someone with PCOS, you need to have 2 out of 3 features. One is that you have irregular periods. So these are cycles that are less than 21 days or more than 35 days long. So that's one aspect, which you can diagnose obviously without having any investigations done. The second thing that you should look for is evidence of high androgens. So we all have an amount of androgens. These are hormones that are traditionally described as male, but everyone has some of them. Now, in PCOS, there is an imbalance where there's too much of this, especially things like testosterone. And so you can find that on a blood test. Testosterone is responsible for other symptoms, in particular acne, hair thinning, and excess body hair. So those can be part of that feature. Now, the third is what I described before, which is the unovulated eggs, which we call the cysts, on an ultrasound scan. Now, where I work, I cannot request an ultrasound scan if the blood test is abnormal and they have irregular cycles, because you can already diagnose it without the ultrasound. But I know that a lot of people want the ultrasound to, you know, cinch that diagnosis. But yes, you can, and you can still have PCOS without having polycystic ovaries on your scan.
Yeah. And I think actually that's the difficulty, because sometimes people will say, oh, I think I maybe had this, but then I've had a scan and it's completely normal. But actually, that's only one of the things that that we use to diagnose. So seeing, you know, we've just been talking about how difficult it is to put all of those things together, get, you know, the blood tests, all of those things. How long does it typically take to get a diagnosis? Now, Amna, you said you were relatively fast. Alia, you said actually it took you a really, really long time and many years.
I think that's because I was one of those people that went with different complaints every single time.
Yeah.
So I would recommend, you know, if you notice a lot of the things that Amina and I will talk about, the different symptoms, just write them all down and take them to your GP, because your GP will be able to determine, okay, these are all kind of like, they look like they're hormonal type symptoms, and they'll be able to, you know, like you said, work with you on that.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry, and just on that, you know, length of diagnosis aspect, I think it varies so much on the doctor that you see. So if someone comes to see me with acne, I'm going to ask about their irregular cycles. I'm going to ask about excess body hair. It's got my, you know, twitch, you know, I'm already thinking about PCOS, but another person may focus solely on your acne. So that's important that you bring your symptoms together to your doctor. Yeah.
But I mean, it is in the forefront of your mind, you know, you're doing this PCOS leadership. What is that? Just tell us a little bit about that. What does that mean?
So I've been doing a course with the University of Birmingham. It's a leadership course. So we're working to become Polycystic Ovarian Syndrome ambassadors. So people who talk about the disease, people who promote research into the disease. So we have written letters to the government. We've helped secure, you know, funding for research. This team that we work with in particular are working on possible medical cures, or not cures, but medical ways to manage PCOS more effectively. They're finding new targets for medication to look at how, you know, we could help people with PCOS. So it's really exciting stuff. And we've had, you know, media training on how to speak about PCOS and things like that. So it's been a really interesting course, and it's full of people, not just people with PCOS, people who are passionate about PCOS in terms of research, and also people, future doctors as well, who want to be better at managing PCOS.
Wow, so we've got two people here that are really kind of making policies, pushing them through, and really making change in their field of work, which is amazing. So,
Thank you.
okay, so I think the thing, if we move on, the thing that people worry about the most with anything to do with their periods or having irregular periods is always fertility. And I think in our communities, that's a kind of a massive, massive thing. What would you say about that? Are there any conversations that you've had?
I think when I was first diagnosed, I was told not to tell anyone that I have PCOS and that I shouldn't speak about it. Again, it plays into it plays into why it's so taboo, because they associate PCOS with infertility.
Yeah.
When actually you won't know until you try to have babies.
Yeah.
And actually women with PCOS have children, and it is possible to have children. You just need to be able to make sure, you know, some women won't even need to go to a fertility specialist. They'll just get pregnant straight away, whereas some will need some help. But the point is, you won't know until you try.
Yeah.
And again, I think especially in our community, it's taboo because of the possibility that you might find it difficult to get pregnant.
Yeah.
And I think it's just not the fact that it's difficulty in fertility. I think it's generally talking about women's health in general.
Yeah.
It's like kind of like, oh no, you shouldn't talk about, you know, periods or, you know, anything woman related, because it's kind of seen as
it is a taboo, isn't it?
It's seen as taboo, and it's also kind of seen as disrespectful, but it's like it's our bodies.
Yeah.
You know, we have to live with this disease every single day, and sometimes we need people around us to understand, you know, that some days are not great, and that's why we behave a certain way, or that's why we're kind of like not feeling too great, or whatever it is, because it massively affects our mental health, it affects our moods, it affects our bodies. Me personally, I'm extremely fatigued on some days. You know, so it's kind of like we need to talk
having
about
that understanding, so that
Just
you have people around you that kind of understand why you feel like this, and it's not just a kind of a one-off, I've got a cold and I don't feel well. Actually, this could be happening every month, every other month, you know,
every day even.
Every day.
Yeah. It really just depends on, you know, a case by case basis. Amina, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, so I think it took me 10 years to talk about my PCOS. And that's me coming from a medical background. So I understand there is a lot of stigma, there's a lot of taboo about the fact that, you know, fertility, because if you're not ovulating, you know, how are you going to get pregnant? That's what people think. And yes, it may be more difficult to fall pregnant, but that doesn't mean that people with PCOS don't have children. And what I've drawn attention to in particular on my page, I actually made a post about this, and I thought this study was really interesting, and that we could just share it with the listeners. That you know, there was a study conducted in Australia that looked at almost 5,000 people, and they looked at these people with and without PCOS. And whilst we accounted for more people with fertility issues and fertility treatment, at the 10-year mark, you know, 61% of people without PCOS had a child, and 60% of people with PCOS had a child. So, you know, we still have children. Yeah, exactly. Practically the same. You know, we still have children. You might need a bit more support. You may need, you know, a medication or IVF or something to help you along the way. But it does, you know, that could happen to anyone. And that's important to remember, that 30% of fertility issues are unknown, 30% are male related, and 30% are female related. So you may end up marrying someone who they may have fertility issues. So I just don't think it's fair to, I think society often puts the blame on women in these situations as well. And it's not always, you know, a blame game.
No, and actually, and I think it's really important to kind of just focus on those statistics, that actually there are lots of reasons why people can't have children, or actually maybe choose not to have children and actually don't want to have those conversations. That is also perfectly okay, which is something that we don't talk about very much in our communities. And like you said, it can be a male issue as well. But also, I think the word subfertility is what is important rather than infertility. Infertility sounds very, very harsh. It says, you are not able to have children, whereas actually that's not the case at all. And now, there are lots of different medications that can help support, ovulation and fertility treatments and things. So if that is an option or something that you want to go through, then that's also something to explore, and really sooner rather than later, which is why having that diagnosis is so important. We are coming up to a break very shortly, but please do join us on the show if you want to WhatsApp or send a message, a text message on 0777 948 1822. We're also live on Facebook Live. You can leave us a message there or on any of our social media. So I'm at Dr. Amna GP. Amna is at the can't talk.
The PCOS doctor.
The PCOS doctor. And Alia, I'm going to let you say yours because you have lots of underscores and things.
So I made this when I was when I was a teenager, but it's let me just get it up because sometimes I don't even know it. Yeah, so it's Alia, ALIA.Khan, KHAN _.
Oh, excellent. So yes, leave us a message. We will be back after the break. And if there's any questions that we can't answer now, we can answer after the show. We'll see you in a few minutes.
Assalamu alaikum. In Luton and its surrounding areas, it is now time for Salat al-Asr.
लुटन और इसके मज़ाफ़ात में नमाज असर का वक्त हुआ चाहता है.
This azan is sponsored by Hannah Solicitors, specializing in conveyancing, family law, immigration, and personal injury. Call us on 01582 329 069.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن لا أشهد أن محمد رسول الله. أشهد أن محمد رسول الله. حي على الصلاة. حي على الصلاة. حي على الفلاح. حي على الفلاح. الله أكبر، الله أكبر.
اللهم رب هذه الدعوة التامة والصلاة القائمة آت محمدا الوسيلة والفضيلة وابعثه المقاما محمودا الذي وعدته إنك لا تخلف الميعاد.
This Adhan is sponsored by MI Law, specializing in criminal law. You can find us at 21B George Street, Luton, Bedfordshire, or contact us at 01582 733 330.
From the studios of Inspire FM, the time is now 6:30.
Any health advice given, whether general, diet, physical, or spiritual, is general only and must be verified by your doctor. If you need medical advice, please consult a doctor.
Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to the Health and Fitness Show on Inspire FM. We are here live today talking about polycystic ovarian syndrome. Please do send us a message if you want to join the show or if you have any questions on 0777 948 1822. We're also live on the Facebook page and YouTube as well, and also on the Inspire FM app. If you would like to download that, you can listen to all the shows both live and on demand. So we've just been talking about what PCOS is, so polycystic ovarian syndrome, and all the different ways that it can affect us. Amna, are you back with us?
Yes, I am here.
Ah, excellent. You're joining us from very far away. So I think we've talked a bit about what kind of symptoms and some of the hormones and testosterone. I think that's usually kind of the big thing that people talk about. But there's also a massive role for insulin as well related to PCOS, isn't there?
Definitely. So 70% of people with PCOS are insulin resistant. And insulin is a hormone that is the culprit in a lot of our symptoms. Testosterone enhances insulin levels, and insulin enhances testosterone levels. So they kind of like increase each other. And insulin is what we call an obesogenic hormone. It literally tells your body, let's lay down more fat and let's not use the fat that we already have. So if someone is, and that's what, Alia explained earlier, that it's really hard to lose weight with PCOS, and that there are a lot of cravings that occur with PCOS. Now, insulin is one of those hormones that tells our body that we need to eat more, basically. And it will tell our cells to lay down more fat, and it will also it wreaks a lot of havoc. So especially when your body doesn't listen to what insulin is telling it to do, it kind of just drives more insulin release and you get more of these effects. So we don't know exactly why, but people's bodies, people with PCOS, our bodies don't listen very well to the hormonal signals that are going on. And that's when you get excess of things like insulin.
So we've actually got a question about the fact that insulin is usually related just to diabetes. People have only heard about it with diabetes. So what's the relationship to people with PCOS? Have diabetes, not have diabetes?
So PCOS is associated with diabetes. So I think around 40% of people with PCOS will develop diabetes by the time that they're 40 years old. So there's a really strong link there. And it's not because we overeat and we're bad people and we're greedy and this, that, and the other. Our bodies are just keen on holding on to calories, getting all the nutrients out of everything that we're eating and storing it. There is a theory that people with PCOS, we are the ones who would survive in a famine. Our body is the one, if you were going through really hard times and there was no food available. And there's also a suggestion that there's a strong genetic link for that reason, because we descended from people who may have gone through periods of time without food. So yes, diabetes is associated quite strongly with PCOS. Doesn't mean that we're all going to get diabetes, but it's something to definitely be wary about.
Yeah. So I think because obviously in our communities there's a higher risk of diabetes and people are always very, very worried about getting diabetes, but also similarly anything related to kind of PCOS or diabetes, the advice is always lose weight. You just need to lose weight and that's it. And I think there's been actually quite a lot on social media recently. There's quite a few GPs who have actually been talking about PCOS and kind of losing weight and healthy eating and things like that. Is that something, Alia, that you found, you were told when you were diagnosed, well, just lose weight?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. I was told, it's as easy as losing weight and then magically all my symptoms will disappear. And I have in the past, using very unhealthy methods, lost weight, but the PCOS symptoms were still there.
Yeah.
And I think that's because my type of PCOS is because I have insulin resistance. And for me, if I don't stay on top of my extreme measures, I'll put it on straight away. I'll put it back on. If anything, it'll come back on double. So I think now I've just kind of learned to live with my PCOS, and I'm just eating a very balanced diet. And I think life is just already too short to be living miserably on a constrictive diet.
Yeah.
So eat what works for you.
Yeah.
It should be balanced. On the topic of insulin, I'm not diabetic, but I was given metformin to manage my PCOS symptoms. And whilst it helped, it did make me very, very sick. So I was vomiting quite a lot. And my stomach didn't like it at all.
Well, that is a very common side effect. So metformin is something that we give usually kind of first line for people who've just been diagnosed with type 2 diabetes usually. And that's kind of the first line treatment. But a lot of people do get lots of stomach upset, diarrhea, vomiting, feeling really sick. And we kind of tend to increase it very slowly. And some people actually can't tolerate it at all. So
I couldn't tolerate it at all. And I ended up in hospital a few times because the vomiting was so extreme, and I'd become extremely dehydrated, which in turn would lead me to have really bad panic attacks, and I'd end up passing out because of the vomiting.
Oh my gosh.
So I had a very, very terrible experience with metformin, but that's not to say that it doesn't work for everyone. Some people can tolerate it quite well. So for me, I did some research and kind of went out and found some sort of alternatives to metformin, which I guess we'll talk about later on.
Well, we can talk about it now because actually this show is sponsored by Polybiotics, which is the supplement company that Dr. Hersi has actually set up for those living with PCOS, and I think you take those on a regular basis.
So I take them every day, the Polybiotics, and for me what worked is Inositol, and I took berberine for a little bit as well, berberine, which is kind of like a berry extract. But I found with Inositol I didn't need to take both at the same time. So I find Inositol works best for me, and I guess I'll let Dr. Amina talk about why Inositol works as an alternative to metformin and why it's probably better in many ways.
So metformin is often given because of the insulin resistance in PCOS. So it makes sense that a drug for diabetes would help us. So studies have found that a naturally occurring substance called myo-inositol, or just inositol, can also help with PCOS symptoms as well, to the same extent as metformin can, without any of the nasty side effects. And because it's naturally occurring, people do kind of tend to gravitate towards that. And so inositol is a great place to start if you are, obviously talk to your doctor first, but it's a great place to start if you're looking for like a natural sort of way to manage your PCOS symptoms. Now, nothing out there is a cure. Like, I'm not going to tell you inositol is going to make you feel like amazing overnight. Usually it takes time, around 3 to 6 months for these things to kick in. But inositol seems to help with insulin signaling. So it helps our body respond well to the insulin that we release. Our body will put away any excess sugar, and that means that our blood sugar levels are more stable, our insulin levels are more stable, and that can hopefully lead to a better hormone profile, better menstrual cycles, more regular menstrual cycles, and better ovulation because of that.
Wow. Okay. Lots to think about there. So, and I'm sure there's lots of different kind of supplements. I mean, in my kind of day-to-day GP life, there's not really much that we recommend, although, you know, I know locally a few consultants do recommend Inositol, but why specifically polybiotics? Because usually people are very against using any kind of vitamins. They're normally kind of really big, you know, really cumbersome. I think usually they come in as sachets. I remember one of the consultants was saying, you know, there's a brand out there that's kind of a sachet that you have to mix into water. And I know if there's anything that I need to mix into something, I'm just never going to use.
Yeah, so I was one of those people using those sachets. I also had a cupboard full of supplements that I was taking to help. Vitamin D, for example, 80% of us are vitamin D deficient with PCOS. There's a strong link between vitamin D deficiency and insulin resistance, a whole load of things. So vitamin D, I was taking zinc, which can help with healthy hair, healthy skin, and also promotes healthy testosterone levels. And then the other thing I was taking was chromium, which can help with maintaining healthy blood sugars. So I was there staring at my, you know, medicine cabinet, and I thought, why am I taking all of these separately? And I decided to actually set out and make up my own supplement with the right doses of these of these vitamins in a easy to take capsule form. And subhanAllah, like the feedback that we've got from our customers has been amazing. You know, we've been trading for just over a year now, and I love hearing about people whose cycles are more regular, people who've fallen pregnant, people who are finding their mood swings are stable. You know, they're not having sugar cravings like they used to. And it's hot. You know, this is what I wanted to do. I wanted to make life easier for us. You know, PCOS in itself is so complicated. Living with this condition is not easy. And I think taking your supplements should be easy with this condition. You know, just taking that one hardship away.
Don't you? You want something that's a little bit easier in all of this. But I think the most important thing to kind of highlight is that that's only one part of kind of life.
Picture.
Just having a balanced lifestyle. I know earlier you said about kind of having a balanced diet. I really hate the word diet.
Yeah.
And I know we talked about it a couple of weeks ago at the beginning of Ramadan, and you know, how to feel a bit healthier. And hopefully, you know, I am still holding on to it. You know, I would say 95% of the days in Ramadan this year, I've managed to have a colourful plate that isn't just kind of fried beige, you know, samosas. But most days having, you know, some fruit, vegetables, and just having that kind of colourful plate. And I think just that balance overall is what is important with something, you know, like PCOS that affects your whole life. But also just, you know, even if you don't have PCOS, even if you do just have, you know, some of those symptoms, just a general balanced life with supplements. And you mentioned vitamin D. I tell all my patients to have vitamin D.
Our communities are more prone to being deficient naturally as well.
Exactly. If there's one thing to take away from this, you know, people might be listening and say, well, I don't have PCOS. Men may be listening saying, well, this is never going to affect me. Wrong. It might affect, you know, your sisters, your mothers, your daughters. That was the other one.
Your wives. Your wives.
You know, people, you know, half the world is women. Is it half?
Half, yes.
Half, exactly. Exactly half. We have it on full authority from a policy and public affairs officer that exactly half of the world is female and may suffer from all of these things. But especially, you know, those of us who wear hijab, I'm constantly telling people, you know, you need the sun for vitamin D. In this country, let's face it, we're probably not going to get much sun. And if you wear hijab, like me, you know, all that's going to be visible to take on the sun are your hands and your face. And half my face is like covered and then covered in factor 50, which is the other thing that everyone should do, is wear sunscreen. You know, this is a public health announcement on all levels tonight.
And you won't age quickly.
and you won't age quickly, and you won't get wrinkles, and you will look young forever and not get skin cancer, which is the most important thing.
Definitely.
But for whatever reason, wear sunscreen and take vitamin D, and maybe consider other supplements as well.
So I Amina was one of those people that always had a cupboard full of different supplements, and I was taking up to 6-7 supplements every single day. And it's at the end of the day, I would just end up gagging half the time because it was just so many, just taking them and taking them every morning or in the evening. That's why when Amina created her company and made this product, I was overjoyed. And honestly, I have personally have seen the benefits of it. It took a time. It took a while. It took about 3 months for me to feel a difference.
Okay.
But it definitely does make a difference. I'm not as fatigued as I used to be. It's definitely made my cycle a lot more regular. Whenever I meet someone with PCOS, I'm always recommending polybiotics. And I like that it doesn't have Amina, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm still taking it because it doesn't include folate.
Yes, right? Yes. And this is also something I really want to let people know about, because if you're BMI, for example, I know we don't like BMI, but if your BMI is over 30, you would, if you're trying to conceive, you need a prescription only strength of folic acid, which is 5 milligrams. A lot of these supplements will just whack folic acid in their supplements because they are gearing towards treating people who are trying to have babies. Now, why would, and this is the mentality I used to have, I don't want to try Inositol because I don't want to have a baby, so why would I have it now? I went years without thinking, trying that to help with my PCOS, because I thought that I had to want a baby at the time. So our product doesn't have folic acid in it because some people will need a prescription only strength, and I wanted it to be inclusive. You should be able to try a supplement whether you want a baby or not, and you should be able to, why, and this is a problem a lot of doctors have as well, come back when you want to get pregnant is a line that a lot of people with PCOS have heard from their doctors, which is wrong.
I think I'm actually guilty of being one of those doctors, probably. I think I that where it's like, well, if it's not really affecting you that much at the moment, if you do want to get pregnant, come and tell us, which I think, I stand by, because actually, if you are trying to get pregnant, tell us sooner rather than later if it's not happening.
Oh, yeah.
Because, you might meet the criteria depending on age, you might get referred because of that diagnosis. But I think there are things that we can do and make life a lot better, just in general. You don't have to be wanting to get pregnant.
And on that topic, actually, when I was first diagnosed, the doctors recommended I go on the combined hormonal pill to manage my symptoms, and I didn't want to because I just didn't feel the need. I needed to. Eventually, because my symptoms got so bad, I had to use it. But I think at the time, if I'd been told that there are other alternatives like in my Inositol available, I probably would have gone with that option rather than putting in, I mean, in some cases it works great. It works wonders for women, of childbearing age. But sometimes women don't on contraception.
I've literally had patients come to me and go, well, I've just seen gynae and they've told me I have to go on the pill or I'm going to get womb cancer. And that's what some people have been told. So this is another thing about PCOS, is that we do have a higher risk for womb cancer, because if you don't have regular cycles and you let that lining build up, it becomes abnormal and it can become cancerous, which is why we need to have a bleed every 4 months, every 3 to 4 months. And if you haven't, you need to see your doctor. And that's if you're not on hormonal contraception. But people are being told they have to go on the pill to protect their lining. And it's like, no, you don't. Because actually, we can induce bleeds with other medications, but people are not given the choice. And that's what I don't like. I mean, the pill can help with a lot of symptoms of PCOS. It can help with the hair issues. It can help with the acne. But there's also other things that can happen from taking the pill. Like, it can affect your mood. It can affect your mental health. And so it's not a case of offering people the pill is wrong, but you should offer it to them with full, transparency that this can help with this, but you may experience this, and it's their choice. At the end of the day, it should always be the patient's choice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's I think that, I would hope, I know a lot of my colleagues, now people are a lot more informed about what PCOS is, and just the management when when we're taught, or when I'm teaching other people, or I know my colleagues around me, it's very patient centered in terms of presenting all of the information. These are all of the different options, and which one would you like? And it's perfectly okay to say, let me go away and think about it, or can I have a leaflet, or actually I've been following this on Instagram, and here's all this stuff, and we've seen it a lot, not just with PCOS, but with menopause specifically. There's been so much on Instagram and on social media, and lots of excellent resources that are really getting people talking, and just raising awareness that actually this exists. This is something that we need to talk about. And we were talking about it over the break as well, that actually we don't talk about this stuff in our communities. And this is partly why, I like to do what I do, and I have that interest in sexual health, because actually this does affect all of us, and we can't just, hide in a corner and pretend that, women don't bleed. We do bleed. We all have periods,
That's another thing I wanted to discuss, how in Ramadan my PCOS has impacted my cycle. So normally normal 4 days, but then because of my PCOS in Ramadan, because I'm fasting, I'm not getting enough insulin in my body, and I'm not eating regularly. It's extended to like more than 10 days. And that is expected. And the thing is, if you are someone who's going through this, definitely speak to your doctor, and it might be one of the symptoms for that as well. So that's one of the things I wanted to mention, that it can mean it could be your regular, it could be your irregular, but it could also mean that your cycle is a lot longer.
And just writing it down, I think, is the most important thing. So when people come to me and they have a period diary, there's lots of apps, you can write it on a piece of paper, whatever it is, but I need to know when your last cycle is and how many days between your cycle, or how long your cycle lasts. So from the first day that you're bleeding, when are you bleeding? When do you stop bleeding? How heavy is it? All of those things are questions that we need to know. So, if you have daughters, if you have sisters, and you're listening to this, and, they're struggling with their periods, please just tell them they need to just write it down, so that we have that information, so we can begin to build that picture that we talked about.
I think we need to normalize it. And I think that's why there's it's taboo, because it's taboo. A lot of people don't know what to do, or where to go for help, to see what's available. And that's simply down to because we don't talk about it enough.
Exactly.
Well, we're here. We're talking about it.
Yes.
We're all here talking about it.
But I think it's you as well, in that women's health in general isn't talked about enough, and isn't researched about enough. And I think that's one of the things I want to advocate for, is to get more funding in for women's health issues. And I think Amina's very, very passionate about that as well.
But I think it's just talking about it, and just, like you said, normalizing it,
starting the conversation.
Because actually, all of us women, most women, unless there's a reason that you don't bleed or whatever it is, will not have fasted through Ramadan. And again, I talked about this a few weeks ago. That is okay. You are allowed to not fast because you're on your period. You are allowed to talk about it. I'm not saying, walk into a crowded room and say, hello, everyone, I'm on my period. But, it's okay for, family, friends, whatever, to know that actually you're eating. You're allowed to have a drink. You're allowed to eat. I was talking to somebody the other day, and I was not fasting, and I was hungry, and I was going to get some food. And they were like, oh my God, really? Then they'll know you're not fasting. I'm like, that's okay. There are plenty of reasons.
Make a point as well on that, maybe.
I think it's important that people teach their sons that women don't fast when they're on their periods, because the amount of times I've had Muslim men come, oh my God, why are you not fasting? These are grown Muslim men, and we shouldn't have this state where we are treating periods like they're like a disease. It's normal. And I want to normalize eating in front of your family. If you are, I had a friend who said she was eating cereal in an airing cupboard because she didn't want her brother to see her eating.
I think it's very normalized in my household, but I think a lot of households still hold that view.
Yeah. Well, thank you. We're literally at the end of the show. We've talked so much about periods and PCOS and everything else, and hopefully, inshallah, listeners have taken something away from it. If only that it's just kind of raised a little bit of awareness. But thank you both so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having us.
One thing that you
Thank
would
you.
want people to take away from this very quickly?
It's okay to talk about your symptoms, I would say, and
Yeah.
it's definitely, like you said, write all your symptoms down and take them to your GP.
Yeah. Amina?
If you have PCOS, I promise you're not alone. There are lots of other people out there who have PCOS, and they can share their wisdom with you, just like people share their wisdom with me. So seek their knowledge, seek their advice, and seek their support as well. You're not alone.
Yeah, definitely not alone. Definitely talk to people. On the Inspire FM Instagram page, there's the advert for today's show, and we'll make sure that tagged in there is Alia, Dr. Amna, Polybiotics, and any other resources that we think are helpful and useful about what PCOS is, where to get support. But just like you guys said, talk about it, read about it, go and see your GP. There is help and support out there. Thank you so much for joining us. There is still, you can still always send in messages or on the social media. You can also listen back to this show on the Inspire FM YouTube and Instagram page and the Facebook page. And please download the new Inspire FM app as well. Thank you for listening. I've been Dr. Amna, and we'll see you next week, inshallah.
Coming up next, we have the Iftari Show. Prepare for Iftar with Inspire